Trying to explain extraordinary things to ordinary people is like trying to commit suicide while explaining how it's just good, healthy exercise. If boulders were stupidity, volcanoes could use them as throat lozenges. Many severely educated people do not enjoy hearing psychology mixed about with geology. But this was not completely unexpected. As the dancers danced, they also whispered. The greatest mystery is in how much we have forgotten. Nay, the mystery is in how much we have neglected to forget. A while longer they glided about the floor, then confided again. Well, 'tis also a deep mystery of how much that is irrelevant that we do remember. Now we move into an area of some positive potential. And the band continued to play, first on the left side, then on the right of the stage. Then the band continued to play, first from the left side of the stage and then from the right. And on they danced away the night. Psychology simply explained. Men who believe that they have mental problems do not yet possess a mental worthy of entertaining real problems. The older established city said to the upstart young suburb, "Stand aside, boy, this here's a man's job." And Dr. Johnson asked Dr. Freud, "Why the hell did you make the word psychology and problem start with the same letter?" A member of the audience stood and asked the featured speaker, "Do you think that dead people probably speak in Old English?" And the expert replied, "But what if they were Swedish when alive?" And the man with the question had to thoughtfully rub his chin and sit back down. Myths, cosmology, and confidence games. An illustrated history. In one universe, on this one world, which had thinking creatures, there were several popular religions, all of which said that the gods and forces of creation periodically send down physical representations of themselves to help protect the beings from their own potential self-destruction. Meanwhile, on another nearby planet, the creatures there hold the belief that the creative forces oftentimes send out shills who will stand around calling out fallacious bus schedules. Meanwhile, on this lovely orb, creatures who can actually think somewhat independently can take their choice of legends and myths and smile somewhat sincerely in the face of the continuing attempted con. The mind-body relationship, a hydroelectric technical paper. When steam's produced from tainted water, a foul smell it will always have. Please note that while this is scientifically valid, it's not really much so since men made up the whole idea of scientific. But further note that this exceptional condition does not render the above statement invalid. And there, friends, is your mind-body relationship, and then some. Having good character proves one thing, that you're a good actor. When you can experience consciousness freed from mere thought, you'll understand what a monk would be with no monastery, and what a hermit would be with a city residence, and how clear skies feel at the sight of even clearer skies. Metaphysical update. There are two kinds of men who know what's going on in life. Those two men staying right over there. Fact update. Simple people do not care to have the apparent complexity of their lives made simple. And now just room left on this page for a final stick out your tongue update. DNA will take the way that offers greatest promise, but just like you on fruitless days, it will take the easy one. As per the legends of one world, once the forces of creation had made man and fully realized what they'd done, they named him not Adam or Khan or Vanescu, but Oil Slick. To understand the nature and purpose of civilization is to be able to set aflame the images of smoke arising from the illusionary fires in the city. Man, the only creature who comes up with his own rules to live by and then complains about them. Before men conceived of the concept of fables, so they could attribute all forms of stupidity to animals, they directed it right where it belonged. But that didn't last long. Question: how can you tell that men are becoming thoughtful? They began using metaphor and allegories. Question: how can you tell that men can't think straight anymore? They have to use metaphors and allegories. Question: where's all this leading? To the death, resurrection, and death again of metaphors and allegories. The civilized wrap their dead in clean white sheets in symbolic imitation of a mystic's mind. And the day came when one man thought, God damn it, I'm about to have a fit. Then thought, God damn it, I'm about to have a baby. Then thought, no, God damn it, I'm about to have a stroke. And then, God damn it, came close to actually having an original thought. But, alas, God damn it. The simple believe there is magic in words. The more sophisticated believe there is magic in what words may represent. And there is always a small outlaw group who see today's and tomorrow's magic as phenomenon arising from pre-vocal days. Things only speak as they get older. But the question is, what sounds do aging make that are useful? When you're mentally part of the collective, you always believe that many of those around you know more than you. That's why you all stick together. Yeah. If that makes any sense. Yeah. Fact, a herd does seem more intelligent than an individual cow. But then again, life is smarter than man. So what? What good does that do the independent thinker? A guy told his gerbil, you know, the most striking part of thinking like everyone else is that you'll be no worse or no better off than you would have been anyway. And little Wilbur smiled. Definition with a city view. A public mystic. A philosopher run amok. The speaker spoke. When you're in love, every day is a holiday. And a man up front called back, how about if you're in love with yourself? And the speaker said, who said that? And the man who had said it pointed the guy next to him and said, he did. And the speaker leaned forward and says, and I'll just bet you're not going to tell me that that other guy is the yourself that you're in love with. And the man and the guy next to him both jumped up, began slapping themselves on the cheeks as they squealed, ye gads, ye gads. And the crowd broke up, except for those who understood what had happened. It's harder to separate an individual cow from the herd than it is to separate lightning's attraction to the herd. The independently alert only run for cover when they can provide their own cover. Definition. Split personality. Another attempt by in-town sheep to cash in on one of a mystic's methods. Without religious literature, man would have no literature, for he would never have become inured of repetition. How to save money on education, a new intellect consumer's tip. You are already adequately civilized and sophisticated when you can accept mythology as history and allegory for fact. Of course, if you want to go all the way and really get fancy-antsy, you can start mistaking the collective you for the individual you. And who knows? They might end up making you mayor of the city. Any viewer writes, if sanity is a merry-go-round, then what the hell do you call this? Telling no one else, one chap privately decided that being a mystic was like trying to turn a sock inside out when it was inside out to begin with. P.S. This was not precisely what he meant, but was as close as he could come to it. Additional item regarding the festivities over at the Big C. Being masked helps make the ball more tolerable, except for those whom it strangles. Number 47 said to his consciousness, "Psst, let's break out of here." And it replied, "Shh, don't let your mind hear that." And just then his mind said, "I heard that." A lot of difference it made. The implication being none, which itself should tell you some, verging on a lot. If you think something's wrong with life, you ain't quite got it. If you think that nothing's wrong with life, you still ain't quite got it. But you're getting closer. Note, to transcendental thought, closer and verging on are not spatial distances, but states of mind. The balance. When thinking's just a hobby, consciousness is more. And now, a late-breaking story from the nearest city. If it ain't bad, it ain't news. So what else is new? And why? And why aren't there additional possibilities? And who convinced you that they're not? Anyone who believes that bad news is actually news, or that it is ever late-breaking, or that it is ever meaningful, is certainly the city's kind of guy. As the author sat autographing copies of his new book, which was entitled, "If You Let a Mystic Move Into Your Spare Bedroom, You Won't Need a Library," a man approached him and asked, "Do you mean that metaphorically or literally?" And the scribe sighed softly to himself and thought, "God, I wish I'd taken up basketball." How to stay simple. Stay upset. A man's mind is a lot like an old shoe in which his brain feels comfortable. Mystics are the sorts of pilots who engage in massive airstrike bunion removal. Frank line philosophy. No one can hurt you but you. And you are you because life made you you. Therefore, no one can hurt you but life. And if it's life doing it, there's not a damn thing you can do about it, so give it up, Guinevere. The heads of imaginary foes make poor over-the-mantel trophies for real warriors. Amusement park update. As long as you speculate, you can ride. A viewer writes, "Why don't you say that a mystic is like a public service announcement in a world of commercials?" Well, I appreciate your interest in the show, but I only do my own original material. The proclivity of phenomenon, or how things tend to go around here. If you couldn't think, you couldn't worry. And if you couldn't worry, what would you have to think about? Creation, dreams, and DNA, our history of man today. Snails do not alone leave trails. Religion was initially an attempt to inspire the mystical in man. Then came psychology to promote feelings of the familiar. And lastly, always lastly, still exists the few still out front. One guy thought, almost all cliches were originally neat if people would just quit repeating them. The title of this item was "The Beauty and Music of Words in Their Initiality." You might also include thoughts. The simple do myths of death, the complex of life. The danger in getting too smart while staying in the city is that it makes you get real wide in the hips. One man says he once heard mystics described as wealthy boat people from Mars. An expanded state of consciousness entails first disassembling the mind, then putting it back together in a manner never intended. in this lifetime. One man's theory is that everyone's crazy. He says he doesn't actually believe it, but that it helps explain a lot.
Yeah.
In one geometry, what is mystical thought and transcendental ideas other than a proper complexing of the simple and a simplifying of whatever else is left? While playing with a neighbor's tree, a kid thought, wouldn't it be funny if everybody actually knows what the secret knowledge is and that nobody but mystics thinks it's important?
No.
And the birch had to muffle a giggle. The normal topography of consciousness is thought, but this is not the only shape it can take. Definition: the religious would-be mystics who couldn't write their own material. One guy's motto is, hey man, life wants you to be more complex. You know, a mystic is a lot like a public service announcement in a world of commercials. As far as intentions go, we weren't talking about speed, I don't think, or direction. As far as any intention, I sort of intended to mention a little bit more about how ordinary minds turn myth into fact, and particularly in the general realm of religion, in the widest possible meaning of the term, and how it is an attempt at a quite distinct, though not described as such, kind of individual approach of trying to focus attention. And that all forms of religious worship, / ritual, / tradition are such crude forms. And then to point out, though, from an individual or a more transcendental, personal position, there is a distinction between focused attention and being hypnotized. And I was going to even mention again the intrigue of outlaws, but to ask you to consider the very close similarity between man's heroes and his outlaws, and then to apply it to thinking. But I got a better idea. I've got a different idea. I made up a new game while standing here called Do You Realize? Do you realize that you can take life seriously or not? Do you realize you can pretend to be civilized or not? Do you realize you can pay cash or use credit? Do you realize you can figure the temperature in Fahrenheit or Celsius? Do you realize you can be miserable or not? Do you realize that tied to this is the fact that no matter what you attempt to say to people, it will end up being some form of bad news if they hear it, if it catches anyone's attention. Or it can be a form, if you like it, another variation, another description, as a form of criticism. And only God and me personally knows how much time I have spent prefacing, exiting comments, introing and outroing for you music lovers, scratch music lovers, weird musicians. Saying, well, if you miss the point if you take what I'm about to say as criticism, etc. That is based upon some reality, but it's also based upon a whole lot of bullshit. Because the human mind, no matter what you say, is going to hear it that way. And if you even engage in it, it will always come out that way. It is a part of the continuing process of an unfinished system within a closed system, that there is no end to it, and therefore anything that sounds to be of pertinent interest to ordinary minds in some way will sound as though it's bad news. You're so used to it, and probably some of you have heard me kick it around so much, the terms, that you thought, well, I know what you mean, and you took it as some sort of criticism of the media, news reporting, or of history. It's not just contemporaneous news reporting. People have already, thousands of years ago, declaimed history as just being all the warts and calamities and despicable acts written down. But then nobody goes any further to consider, besides fleeting attempts to attribute it to some psychological flaw in man, but no one considers the fact that there cannot really be any news, any information freed from the taint of criticism, freed from the rank, well, freed from the aroma. Most people don't look at it as being rank. Freed from the aroma of it being bad news. But no one questions why, and it has nothing to do with psychology. It has to do everything with electrochemical energy and the laws of physics. But then you're left with speaking for you, you're left with the question of, isn't it possible that you could try and consider information that would not in any way be bad news / critical? Some way that does not sound as though you're whining. Some way that does not sound as though you're hectoring. Some way that it does not sound as though you're doing either a good or a bad imitation of a Baptist preacher or your mother. Or for some of you, your mother, who I know in a couple of cases was a Baptist preacher. Which those of you who don't know the 2 or 3 I'm talking about, it would explain some of their, shall we say, particular peccadillos. Well, it especially explains why they always drink in a closet when we have a party. Well, you got to remember, being a Southern Baptist won't stop you from sinning, it just stops you from enjoying it. Does anybody remember the last news item from last time that said a man from the fat planet visited the purple planet and told the people on the purple planet, he told them their history, where they came from, and just generally told them what was up. The purple people thanked him for the information and went on about their business. That is not just either an obscure, according to your look at it, an obscure attempt at a joke. That would be the nature, absolutely, of a better attempt at conveying information. That they thanked him for the information and went on about their business. That was, from any ordinary view, that item is complete fiction. Because if you told anyone something that was information to where they would listen to it, now just take my description. They thanked him for his information, and went on about their business. Being no room in the sentence, nothing, no reference to their reaction to it, if any. They just thanked him and went on about their business. The at least implication being that it had no effect on them. Except the way in which I wrote it, they thanked him for the information. That is, they took it as information. They did not take it as absolute folly or just a joke. They heard it as information. They thanked him for his information and went on about their business. That is fiction. I mean, all those sentences make sense, but that is fiction. Now that I have expanded the inner intent for you. Because people will not hear information enough to thank you for it. The thank you in this case would represent that they actually heard it, that they were attentive, went, yeah. That it had some, at the moment, it seemed to have some pertinence. If they did not have a feeling about it, which my analyzation of my own sentence is, they thanked him for the information and went about their business. It had no effect, they had no reaction to it, they expressed no feeling, they had no particular thought. They heard the information and thanked him and went on about their business. That it had no effect. That's fiction. It cannot be done with ordinary minds. To To ordinary minds, they cannot thank him for the information going about their business. They could say, the sentence could say several variations, but it could say, they heard the information and said, hey, screw you. Or they heard the information, well, you're an idiot. Or heard the information that says, where are you from? You're from another planet. You're nuts. Or they could hear the information and go, we've been waiting for a man like you to say that. Or they could say, hey, I like that. As a matter of fact, I wrote a paper on that. Here, let me show it to you. Or by the way, I said that to my brother-in-law. Where is it? I'll prove it. Hey, I like you. The rest of it's fiction. You're back to the bad news / criticism. There has to be some personal reaction with ordinary minds or they won't hear anything. The reason I made up the idea of do you realize that was, again, I asked rhetorically last time also, does anybody realize over the last couple of years all these news items, these one-liners, these apparent jokes and these myths and these stories and this wrecking of history and decent psychological thought, and within it all, if you put it together in a certain way, is an absolute mystical system, complete with rituals, tradition, albeit instant tradition, but hey, tradition, methods, very specific methods. You understand all bad news is about the past. You understand all criticism is about the past. And don't take these away out and say, well, sure. You never thought that. You can't criticize anything but the past. You can't find bad news to be the future. It has to be based upon, even if it apparently is prognostications that should give you the willies, it's based upon previous ignorance, such as saying, well, we're going to destroy the planet. Are you sure? Well, just look over here. Look back here what we've already done. And if you're an ordinary mind, it's like, well, what can I say? There is no bad news unless it's about the past. You cannot be critical about anything unless it's about the past. Also notice back to the second stage. If you consider a difference between how the ordinary minds turn myth, how they turn pre-vocal conceptions of reality, which are irrelevant, but that's the dreamed of paradise, that's the dreamed of lost state of some greater level of consciousness, when all it was a dreamed of state of when you were still a kid, collectively. But the ordinary mind takes the pre-vocal days, and I'm just lumping it all into myth. It's when man began putting words on that, which went beyond, that was not completely based upon mere needs for bio survival. They began to speculate on other things. They had to turn them into myth because what the hell are you going to call it? And hence you got the ideas of gods and spirits and etc. But once they turn that into the myths into fact, and if they believe stories of the gods, the forces of creation, actually sing down their sons, their daughters, their brother-in-laws, or they take on human form and come down to help man. To help man. Particularly to help save man from himself. Once you do that, then all the rituals after that, no matter how well intended, which of course means horseshit if you know what you're doing, but I'll throw that in, no matter how well intended, then after that, all religious practice and ritual that has now become like a hardwired version of an original conception, after they do that, it has a very common denominator no matter what the worship is, no matter what the context is. And that is that the worship / ritual / traditions are all precomposed, already choreographed. Whether there's a ritual of like a mass, whether the church service is, no matter if you just show up at 8:30 and you bow the first time and you sing 4 songs and you take up collection and then you sing another song and send the plate around again or whatever it varies from church to church. Whatever it is, the prayers, almost without exception from the least civilized areas are still in the kind of animalistic, shaman-driven tribes that believe they're engaged in some kind of worship, all the way from that to the Episcopal Church, Greek Orthodox. The most civilized, they take prayer to be of great importance. They don't see it, but I was going to point against an attempt to focus their attention, but the prayer is of great importance. It is humans, in the most human way, that is verbally, even if they do it silent in their mind, attempting to communicate with the center of creation. Attempting to communicate. But notice this. All prayers are pre-written. Nobody ever thinks anything about it. Mysticism, the ability to think independently, if the distinction, let me go back to mysticism and organized religion, ordinary religion. There's no such thing as mysticism if it is pre-written or predictable. So there you have another, what do you call it? Starts with a P. Psychology? No. Dr. Freud? No. It cannot be pre-written. How about this? We hadn't done the warning. Now this is not a criticism of religion. But you understand, it's all pre-written. And an ordinary mind would say, well, it has to be. That's why I went and sought them out. I didn't know what to do. I had this great longing. I had this feeling like I wanted to do something. I ate somewhere. I ate somewhere. Something, and somebody said, what you need is a religion. That's what they're after. And maybe you read a little bit, or you go in and see a priest or a rabbi, and you say, I've got this feeling like nothing satisfies it. Drugs, no matter food, exercise, nothing does it. It's like I want to know something, and I can't quite put into words. You're in the right place. And you say, okay, tell me what to do. And that seems to be natural. But now if you were actually after something, if you were telling the truth, which many people start, and as far as they could tell, they were telling the truth, that you're after that which can't be described, and you find somebody that go, well, that's great, you're in the right place. And you go, oh, thank goodness. And they said, let me describe to you what we're going to do. You want me to do it slower? And you go, oh, thank goodness, I found it. And they go, let's describe what to do. I can hardly wait. Phew. That is absolute proof, by the way, of being ordinary, of being sane. I've run this one by you twice in last week, so here it goes personally. It is an absolute benchmark, living proof that you're ordinary, that you're sane, that you're part of the herd, is you believe that other people know more than you. I don't know whether that's too simple, too complex, too dumb, but you understand that is to be sane and ordinary, at the sane and ordinary level. In ordinary minds, of course, if they were to hear that, would take great exception, or they'd wait for me to drop another shoe like, well, I thought you were verging on talking insanity and just nonsense, but now you're really getting close. Why else would you go talk to somebody if they didn't know more? Well, damn, they got me again. That is like a cutoff point, and you can't fake it. And even though I dramatize it and do these little theatrics and make faces and holler, damn it, you can't fake it. You can't talk somebody into it until you realize on your own that's, well, again, it's the cutoff proof of whether somebody's a mystic or not. You simply come to the conclusion, the understanding. You don't have to tell anybody. You suddenly look around, and as far as everybody in the world collectively, because you're that good, you've reserved some kind of blank space. It's like a black hole, like there's somebody somewhere. But you simply look around, and everybody else, from the Pope to the presidents, to your parents, to the best meaning people in the world, to saints, to charity workers, everybody, you look around, you realize that no one knows any more than you do. They can have, obviously, more education, a better job, and et cetera. But you are not a mystic until you simply realize there's no judgment involved. It's like you get the information, and then you go on about your business, your real business. It's you simply realize the world's, whoever wins, they get Nobel Prizes in psychology, well, they should. The world's greatest living psychologist, the world's greatest psychiatrist, the world's greatest theologist, you simply realize he doesn't have any idea what's actually going on. Well, he does not know any more about it than I do. That is the only beginning of actually trying to be more conscious. That's the only beginning of any form of real transcendental effort. And as always, I cheated. You shouldn't even put it in words. You certainly don't have to. It's not something that you try and tell somebody. You just realize life is alive, just like he kept saying life is alive, and humanity is alive. It is a living organism. It has its own collective intelligence, and the level of intelligence is just irrelevant to me personally. To everybody else, it's just fine. Which is the kind of information, if you told them, they would hear it and not even thank you for your views. What do you mean it's just fine? Obviously it's just fine. We get along just fine without your criticism, without you even noticing it. See, that's the point. And if you said, well, that's the point, they go, where, what? See, doesn't that just show that you were a fool to try to talk to them again? I told you not to. It's not to tell them. I mean, if you try to tell ordinary people what's going on, you're telling them one thing. Hey, look over here. You think you've seen a fool before? Hey. Hey, huh? Yeah. There's no such thing as pre-written mysticism. It cannot be. There's no such thing as preordained transcendental thought. Whatever you want to call it. The great idea of some secret work that some people are doing, or the individuals are doing with themselves. That's the cutoff line. That is the distinctive. That is the operational definition is that it is not pre-written or predictable. Which, you know, if you don't think that that takes all the armchair, would-be drugstore mystics out of the game, you weren't listening. Because as soon as you tell somebody, yes, the whole idea of being able to do this is it's not planned, it's not written, it's not predictable. I assume that you will not give up your day job waiting for people to go, that's exactly what we've been looking for. It's silly. There's no reason you laugh. That's kind of charity laugh because it's not even funny. It's just so true, it's silly. And so you end up, though, that you're seeking some sort of direction, and it's always pre-written. And your ordinary mind, not somebody else's, we're not talking about somebody else, but the mind says, well, sure, it's pre-written. That's why I went there. They know what's going on. You might have to go through 2 or 3 different religions, 2 or 3 different psychologists, 2 or 3 different universities, 2 or 3 different philosophical schools, but you're convinced that somebody else knows something else. Why would you go out looking? Well, of course, again, you go out looking because you don't know any better. Everybody starts out looking. But after some length of time, the cutoff line is you're just playing around, that you're not actually born into this. You're not actually genetically captive of this. If you still believe that somebody knows more than you. Oh, I'll just go ahead and put it point blank. Anybody can hear it. Nobody knows any more than you do in the collective. Nobody. There is a level of intelligence of humanity. It is stable. It has to be stable. There's nothing wrong with it. But if you think you're simply not involved with this, you have not reached the beginning level, if you believe that there's somebody, I don't mean it's not 1 or 2 exceptions, but if you think, without even analyzing it that specifically, that you just think that they're like whole vague segments that you don't normally put into words, like, well, certainly, if I wanted to learn about psychology, if I wanted to learn about the nature of human behavior, if I knew as much as the med school at Harvard, and for those of you who don't remember, a PhD theoretically represents that you individually, once a university grants you a doctorate in some degree, you are a living example individually of the collective wisdom of the university. And so when you say, well, that's based upon it's a nice little story. It's nice. Well, nothing wrong with the world of academia. It's a lot easier on you than playing soccer for a living. Plus, you don't have to retire as early. But there is this unanalyzed feeling. Nobody analyzed it, and if they were asked to, they would think that I was an idiot to ask them to, that there's no doubt that the university, taken as a whole, taken literally and figuratively, that Harvard med school knows more, speaking of med school covering psychiatry, neurology, but psychiatry, that Harvard, if not some of them individual, but just say the faculty right now, collectively, to say that they do not know more about human behavior than me, it's ridiculous. That's proof you're ordinary. I mean, you've got to believe that. You've got to operate on that basis. And you've got to believe whatever religion, even if you're not overtly and passionate religious right now, you still believe that somewhere, either in an actual physical public shell of religion or within the religion. Like the idea of Sufi schools being the mystical driving force within Islam. The one way or the other, you believe out there are schools somewhere, some collective organization, and it's not worth me disputing it. I don't know whether I could understand it. I don't know whether they teach in my language. But I have no doubt that there are groups somewhere that collectively if not individually, but collectively, that they are harbingers, they're historical caches of this great secret knowledge and the tradition. There's no doubt about it. Not if you're ordinary, there's not. If you belonged over there, then you know, hey, I don't belong over there. They don't know any more than I do. Let's all say together, we knew that would clear it up. If we played Do You Realize again, I wonder how long I can keep that up. Do you realize that? Do you realize that anything that ordinary people think that you'll participate in is a waste of time? That was when I tried to open it with, if I can quote myself, let's play a game of Do you realize? Do you realize that you can take life seriously or not? Do you realize that you can pretend to be civilized or not? Do you realize you can pay cash or buy on credit? And so on. Do you realize that all of that is involved with taking what ordinary people think, not just speaking in behavior and whether you absolutely go along with it physically, but that you participate collectively in what the world thinks, which means you're dancing with them. It doesn't matter whether you agree or disagree with it, because remember, as the dancers continue to dance, the band continues to play on stage, first on the left, then on the right, and the dancers dance on, dance away the night. That is, the progress, continued health of humanity. But as long as you think what anybody else thinks, you will perforce be victim of thinking that somebody inside this widespread, this collective bovinian herd of consciousness, that they know more than you. And as some of you suspect, know more is not the description. There is no good one. But you believe, you operate on the assumption, if you're participating in that dance, then perforce there can be no doubt that somebody, either some individual, some select group of individuals, or perhaps whole organizations and institutions know more than you do. And it's got nothing to do with ego, and it's got nothing to do with individual or collective stupidity of humanity. At that level, no one knows any more than anyone else. That's one reason they fight so passionately over illusionary position of having degrees, having awards. It's like nobody knows any more than anybody else, but hey, what kind of degree you got, Charlie? And you think, well, none. And they say, look on my wall. That's part of it. But no one knows any more about what's going on in life than you do, unless you're ordinary. Then you're all right. Do you realize that all the complaints that men have mentally can be cured? They can't by psychology, because if you're back in that, then you believe that somebody else knows more than you do at the collective level. Do you believe that all the heartaches of men suffer can be vanquished? Yeah, by religion. No. Do you realize everything but corns and bunions and bad back and death? Do you realize everything but that could be cured? Do you realize that? It can be cured. All you got to do is be able to be more conscious, to think in a way, in a manner that's entirely different than the collective on this planet. On this planet. Now, far beyond, by the way, of, I can give you the kindergarten stuff, it's far beyond the collective of you saying, well, all right, I hear some promise to that, so I'm going to struggle against. I grew up being I was a liberal Jew, or I grew up as a conservative Southern Baptist. I grew up in such and such culture. Count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, now, past that. Nice try. Collectively. It doesn't matter individually. That's another one of the busy works that stops most people, even if they heard some of that, which people have come up with that sort of general idea, even in psychology, much less would-be mysticism. But to free yourself, to be able to be more conscious in some way, you have got to free your spirit, your soul, your understanding from the constraints of your peers, of your familiar environment, from your upbringing. That's good for 5 minutes or 5 seconds. Yeah. But if you stay there, it's like, well, I'll try to do better as soon as I get well. That is, like, I'll try and even be more conscious once I straighten out my, if I may say so, personal mental problems. I went through all that since no one seemed to particularly like the one that pointed out that a man who says that he has mental problems doesn't yet even have a mental worthy of entertaining real problems. Not playing non sequiturs again. That's just part of being ordinary, is to say, well, I've got personal problems. I would love to really try to work on myself and have a greater understanding of life, or to expand my consciousness, but Jesus, I got some personal problems I got to work out. Well, that's nice to meet you. Check back in. You don't have to worry about the person waking up in the middle of the night. They ain't going to check back in. You slap on the back and say, by God, stick with it. Good show. As long as you believe you got mental problems, you ain't even got a mental. Is the point. Hate to be sarcastic about it, but it doesn't cost any more. I'm saying that to some of you, that's the only time I seem to get your attention. You go, but if you got mental problems, you don't really have a mental. You never thought about it? People have bodies, and they don't take body problems personally, except people that are afraid of dying and the dentist. I mean, it just simply is. But say, well, I got mental problems, and you take that personally. It's not personally. That's the collective state of humanity's intellect. It's part of it is, well, I got mental problems. Why? Because they don't know anything. Well, yeah, but I could, but you're being too rough about this because I have personal mental problems. Well, I know you do. I got to work them out. Well, I know you do. Hell yeah. I didn't mean you didn't. But you understand, that's like telling a kid, go ahead, I'll go ahead and play in your do. Everybody's got to be entertained. All you got to do is tell a kid that. You don't have to go back and check in the room. You don't have to keep going in and say, are you still having fun? They'll have fun forever. But you realize that you can be past that. I say you can. I assume by now, playing that game again, if we were actually addressing all this to some television audience, we would assume by now that the television audience is down to somewhere between, the obvious answers or conclusions 1 and 0. So I can go ahead and be freer with it. Do you realize that the actual dream of all religion, of psychology, of just conventional wisdom, that we could do better, our professional wisdom, that we could kind of clear ourselves up and work out our subconscious traumas and et cetera. Our religion says we could work out the original sin or the continuing malfeasance of man spiritually. This could be done. It's a gradual process and we've got to work at it, but we could kind of work this out. And you can't work it out. It'd be suicide. There's no working out. That's why the little joke about men who say they have mental problems, they don't have mental. They don't have a mental, much less a problem. They're alive. They're just healthy as hell. Mm-hmm. Nowadays, the more mental problems you have, in a sense, some of you saw this before, I mentioned it. In a sense, that is even no great importance, but it's a scintilla of additional proof that you're really healthy. Just to say, I know I may appear to be all right, but God, you don't know. The dark night of my soul. No. Write that down. I don't know. Sometimes I feel, I know I look happy and I look successful, and I know most of you envy me, and I know a lot of the women, but you don't know. I know, but I have my own problems. I know you do. And that's additional proof nowadays. You don't overdo it. But just to say, well, I have additional problems. And somebody says, well, would you like to tell us about it? Don't get too personal like, well, yeah, I beat up my mother and starve her and lock her in a closet. You can overdo it. Just kind of look thoughtful, momentarily pensive perhaps, go, well, I'd prefer not to go into it, you understand, but I've got my own problems. And you being a fellow human being and sophisticated, you go, oh. All you're saying is, I am healthy, I am normal. Do you realize that there's a point past that? Religion's talked about it, psychology has talked about it, the myths of humanity, the original cave paintings, the original sand drawings, only one of which has been saved from Samaria. It's a postcard I have. Somebody mailed to me personally. Or was that? No, that was the one that had the photograph of Buddha on the back. Well, It was in black and white, though. It wasn't a big deal. Do you realize that there is absolutely, since there is no such thing as a dream that's not based upon anything, because even stinking steam came from some stream somewhere, remember, those of you who like that one. Steam made with tainted water, a foul smell will always retain. That was the one that had to do with the mind-body relationship. This also has to do with the historical, vague mental recollection of what man has been through, as opposed to the pre-vocal DNA, which, don't look now, but it's still around. Where? See, that's what people do. Where? You can be subject to attack by these awful rats and roaches of stupidity and misdirection as long as you look in the right place. Where? There. DNA is still here, still pre-vocal, but it had to turn into steam. But do you realize what we're talking about? The psychology, mythology, religion, obviously, of course, is forever talked about some freed state, some superior state, some resurrection of man, the crummy old thing. You realize there's one way, forget death now, forget death, we're not talking physically, other than the fact of the effect it would ultimately have on you physically, which is still not the point. That's not it. That's a less selling point than the original non-selling point of trying to do this anyway, so forget the physical. But you realize that the dreamed of cures of all that, the dreamed of treatments, are actually possible. And all it is being conscious in a different way. Which is, even though I said it falls under the classification of being not possible, it is when it lasts, not the experience, not the as wonderful and as enjoyable and as captivating as they are to many people, the passing states. To actually continually be conscious in a different way is to not suffer. And it is, as impossible as it is an alteration of what you are genetically. And even though I said admitted from a scientific view, from any rational view, that it is not possible, just not possible. There is this, remember, it is possible. It is, they will admit this, which makes me feel a lot better. Serious scientific people admit that there are parts of the brain that they can't find anything going on rather than just kind of a small coma state. If you got them out of that state, you would have genetically altered what you are. You are a walking continuous kind of, quote, mystical trip after that. But look how it's been doctored up throughout the years and attributed to gods, attributed to fate, destiny. Nobody will ever attribute it to where we all came from. Your own genes, creation itself, that it is still a part of the continuing line that drives everything else. But it is so far away, it is so pre-vocal, it is so far removed from the minimal need to survive physically, that to make it sound of any interest, it had to be mixed up into a commercial. It had to be turned into a kind of sales pitch. It had to be based upon criticism of man, like, well, if you don't try to do better, not that you'll ever do better, as then said, but religion, psychology, your mother, civilization itself saying, well, if you don't try to do better, you're going to pay even a worse price for it. And all civilized people, the majority, the middle class, the middle of the road of life's collective existence in man goes, it's true, whether I can do it or not. You've got to want to. You've got to suffer over it. You've got to try. I know I do. You can get beyond try. But it's genetic. It's not spiritual. It's not even intellectual. Not simply intellectual. It's certainly not simply physical. And as I hinted or said, a whole lot of it I've already given the methods, just hit and miss. But the obvious one, if you are thinking in any way, if you're dancing with the collective thought of humanity, you ain't doing it. I hate to be negative when we end. No, you don't. Okay. If you're dancing with the collective thinking of humanity, you're not doing it. I mean, that's simple enough until next time. Take 2 aspirin. Unless I die or my personal problems overcome me before next time. Oh. Take 2 aspirin. Some of you probably just 1.